Welcome to the JAMODI podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it. Coaches, the JAMODI podcast is powered by Biology. What's your BSA score? The Biology Skills Assessment is the only verified skills metric endorsed by the NAIA, NJCAA, and a growing number of NCAA coaches to discover and develop the best talent for your team. This 4-minute, 40-shot test can be taken free today on the Biology mobile app. Elevate your game. You know, being in the college world and getting to not just coach against great coaches, but you also probably listen to and are all constantly trying to learn. You know, what are some of the best things that you've borrowed lately?
Yeah. So just to give you some context, I mean, we played a really different style this year than I've ever coached. I mean, we really played up tempo in transition, and then we played, nothing but zone, which I've always been a solid man-to-man guy just from high school to college. Like, I've never played for anyone that taught zone, and so for me, one of the coolest things that we took, I watched just a bunch of film, all over the place. And to be honest, I don't know where I pulled this one from. And I know a lot of different people do different versions of it, but just what we call a 100-point game. And essentially the way it works is you're encouraging guys to play fast. So, a shot clock is 30 seconds. If we can score with 25 on the clock, you get 25 points. And the game is to 100. And it was just really good for us this year because, 0 points is worse than 10. So just because you get down the court quick doesn't mean you want to take a bad shot.
Yeah.
It really helped us flow out of transition into our half court offense, helped us with shot selection. And then conversely, like transition defense, I mean, the other team's obviously trying to push it right back at you to score and get the most points. And it's a great conditioning because guys get tired really quickly. And so we did some different things with that, where sometimes we'd make them stay in, sometimes we'd let them hockey sub, but they can only sub on defense.
Oh, nice.
And just to mix it up. And so it really became something we did every day. And we'd usually do some sort of series, best of 7 or whatever. It just helped a lot. And it was something I'd never done before, but, picked it up on a video. And then all of a sudden it's, something that's like kind of ingrained in our DNA as what we're going to do in practice almost every day. And so that was probably the thing that stands out the most this year that we borrowed from someone that was really good for us.
You nailed it though. Something pretty interesting. How many coaches are still not, I mean, maybe initially you need to do like a breakdown, something that teaches movement, but then how many drills can we take out of practice by putting something like that in? Because right off the bat, you just nailed it. You're working on your transition game on either side of the floor. You're working on your shot selection. You're also getting conditioning in that game, because I played that game at Faith, and it's awesome how fast they go and the good peer pressure that comes from your entire team with the shots that they're taking and how much they celebrate, those 20 and 25s. But that's a great game that can have us work on so many things and allow us maybe to free up some more time in our practice plans.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what we're looking for, right? Is things that we can do that encompass a lot of different things instead of just one skill at one time.
Yeah. I love the fact that, how many years in college now have you been coaching?
That's a great question. I gotta have to count that up real quick. So we got 15. This was year 15. Yeah.
15 years. But you're willing to learn, change, and coach some styles that are in a way that you didn't play that way and you haven't done it yourself. I think that's pretty incredible. How much did you enjoy the more up-tempo running and gunning style?
I liked it a lot. I mean, I think for me, when you look at, as a coach, what is the hardest thing to teach and get good at defensively? I think it's transition defense. It's really hard. You got to sprint back. You got to talk. You got to find your guy.
So you should live in that space offensively then. Yeah, that makes sense.
You got to be able to close out, And so it's like, all right, well, and we have a team that's pretty versatile. And so we don't have to get it to a point guard to bring the ball up. We have a lot of guys that can start the break and, can make plays in transition with space. And so it fit our personnel pretty well. But, we did it. My first year here was just a COVID year. So we only got 12 games. And so we did it to a degree and had a good amount of success. But then this year was like, all right, well, we got to ramp this up. Like, let's do it quicker. And so it's been a lot of fun because I think any offense, right, you're trying to find those 8 to 10 points that are easy, where you're not having to just score and execute exactly right to get the shot you need against a set defense. And I just think it gives you a little more opportunity in transition to, score easier. But conversely, man, like I had to adjust to the swings in the game because, we had huge swings where, we're up 20 and then all of a sudden we're tied, or, we're down 15 and then 4 minutes later we're ahead. And, with the way you guys play, you understand that a little bit, but it's not the same as when you're just getting down and sitting in a half court and grinding out possessions. Like a 15-point lead is hard to gain or lose. But in this, the way we're playing, it happens pretty fast.
I love that you said that. The hardest thing with changing to more of an up-tempo style as a coach is giving up control. Because within a slower paced game, you really can, I heard the term joysticking players. I like that. You really can joystick players and control more in the game. When you go up tempo, it's a little bit of, it's out of my hands to a point, but those big swings can be maddening if you don't lean into those and embrace those as a coach.
Yeah. Our first game this year, we were playing Sul Ross at home, and we're about 5 minutes into the second half. We're down 15. And again, this is a new style we've never played. So I'm just kind of sitting on the bench like, is this going to work or not?
Do we get out of it? Do we get out of it? Should we get out of it?
Yeah. And luckily we caught like an 18-0 run or something. And, I think they got a little tired, which is what we're banking on. And we were able to stretch it out. But there was definitely some moments where when you're out of your comfort zone, you're like, is this going to work or not?
And well, I appreciate the fact that you recognize that, but you stuck with it, because I can still remember Wes Watson when him and I at McKinney went from walking the ball up the floor to just never walking and shooting a ton of threes the next year. First game we get down and he looks at me, and we were pressing too. He looks and he goes, do we need to get out of this? And in my heart, I'm thinking, oh man, we might need to get out of this. You got to stay the course a little bit. The biggest thing I found with playing fast is spurtability. Like there's this weird confidence, borderline arrogance that comes from the style of play, which is we're never out of this thing. We can always get back in.
For sure. Absolutely.
What defense did you move to? What zone did you move to? And what advantages did you find in that?
Yeah. So it's interesting, just to give you some background. I've always wanted to have a zone that was a great changeup and something that I felt we could go to and be pretty good at it. But what I've learned is when you're just a man-to-man team, you have to work so hard on that in the fall. And for us, we only get, 3 or 4 weeks with our guys before we start playing games. And so, you're working on all these rotations and how you're going to guard ball screens and all these different things. So you really can never get good at a zone because you're always preparing for the next opponent. How are we going to guard this set? How are we going to guard this guy? All of those things, right?
Yeah.
It never really stops. So you never really get a good amount of time to work on zone. So this year I was just like, hey, we're going to put the zone in first. I'm committed to this. We had played some man the year before. We had a lot of guys back. So we should be able to. So you thought
those principles were going to be there, at least those man-to-man principles would be there.
Yeah. And so then we put the zone in, and, I studied a lot of different zones. So I would say it's kind of a morph of a lot of different things that people do. And then things that we've just figured out because, as you go through a season, someone attacks you a single way and you got to figure out, how are we going to cover this? And that was what a lot of this year was just, okay, they're doing this to us. So how are we going to adjust, and how are we going to, what is going to be our response to this moving forward? And so, it starts as a 2-3 and then everyone kind of has specific places where they're supposed to be and responsibilities, which is why I like it, because you really know whose fault it is when something happens, and
nice.
I think that's different from most zones is, It's like, oh, we're in zone. Like, yeah, who was supposed to cover that? It's like, no, you were supposed to be there,
Yeah.
or you were supposed to be here, depending on where the ball went. So it was fun. I think we got better throughout the year at learning, at making adjustments within the game, and our guys got better at seeing it and coming with suggestions because. Again, it was something I'd never done before. So, and man, yeah, you're like, okay, well, they're doing this to us. This is how we're going to adjust or, do something different because you're used to seeing it. But in this, it was not that way.
Yeah.
So
that's great though, to ask those questions of your players about, you and I did play, but we're not out there with them in that moment. We're seeing from a different angle. And so sometimes asking players, what do you see? What do you feel? And then the ownership that comes with asking those questions, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say more times than ever this year, I just handed a marker to our guys at halftime or even in a timeout and like, all right, we'll draw what you're talking about so we can all see it, which is something I really had never done before. But you're right, it's pretty cool to see that progression. You get, they get some confidence and some leadership out of it as well. So it's been interesting. I would say kind of the second part of your question, it changed our preparation a lot, which was nice. I mean, I didn't plan on playing zone the whole year, but we played it well. Kind of 40% is the benchmark where you want to hold teams under, and we did that for the year. But just it changed the prep because everyone has a lot of man sets and a lot of different things, and most people just have a handful of zone plays, and even if they put one in, they get a lob on you or do something. I mean, it's a one or two off play that they're going to score on you, and you're going to know what it is after that. And then it's just going to kind of come back to the basic stuff that people do, which usually is high post, short corner, or try to dribble gaps or whatever. And so, those are things you're working on a lot. And so it allowed us to work on us a little bit more than I've been able to through the years because we were spending so much time working on scouting and how we're going to guard, all these different man sets that people have. So that was one thing I noticed that I liked because it allowed us to shorten practices a little bit, which I think was important for the guys this year, just holding up physically.
Coach, you nailed it though. I think you hear so many coaches talk about we need you as a coach in your practice plans, you should be focusing more on you than your opponents, becoming better at what you do. But when you run, when you run a ton of sets or you run man and are trying to stop everything that the other team does, you really run out of time, in my opinion, to get better and get good at what you guys do. And I think when you simplify things, and to me, you and I are a lot of aligned now in playing fast up tempo and trying to play against a disorganized transitioning defense is better. And so we have to work on that piece. And then a zone, like you said, 95% of the time is worked on either man-to-man defense and man-to-man offense. So let's play against their 5%, the things that they're just not, they don't spend a lot of time on. I made that shift. Did you play in high school? Was your coach man-to-man only? And in college, was he man-to-man only?
Yes. Yeah. Both. I played for Richie Alfred at Martin, which.
I didn't know that. I love Richie. Yeah.
Phenomenal coach, and we were really good defensively. I mean, I remember beating Duncanville with Brian Boddicker and all those guys in like a 45 to 44 game. That's just how we played. It was, we were gonna just grind it out. And then Cam DeWeese at UMHB, also really good defensive man-to-man guy. And so that's what I did basically my entire career. So that's what I'm comfortable with.
Was there a piece of and just be honest here, because that's how I felt. Was there ever a piece of you that was maybe intrigued by going zone? Because playing against zone teams, at times I would get frustrated with my guys. Like, listen, zones are easy to beat.
Yeah.
You get in right spots, you get dangerous, you build your triangles, you try to puncture, you make the ball work. Come on, fellas, what are we doing? And it would just slow us down or take us out of what we like to do. But so I'd see that, but then there's this kind of almost pride in me that I'm a man-to-man guy. We don't do that. Did you ever feel that?
Absolutely. I think that's kind of the competitive and ego piece of the game, right? Is like, I'm going to figure out how to stop you at what you're best at, right? And so that's the chess match. Is we're going to do this to you on this set or this ball screen, and it's just this back and forth of adjustment. That's great. I mean, that's a lovely part of the game, but it's the same. It's just it's different. It's a different game. When you're playing zone. And yeah, some people are really good at it, and they're free and they let it fly, and but then when those shots stop going in, particularly against a team that's trying to get out and run, now then you see people start to tighten up. It's like, well, now we gotta force it inside, or we gotta get it here before we shoot it. And so to answer your question, yes, there was definitely the place of like, no, I'm a man-to-man guy, and our teams have been pretty good at man-to-man, but I'm trying, and I think you're doing the same, to develop a style to where we're not easy to play against, we're not easy to prepare for, and then if we can make it to the NCAA tournament, teams aren't going to have seen the way we play very often, and so I think it gives you an advantage in a scenario where you're seeing teams you haven't seen before, or you're playing quick turnaround games, and that's the goal, is like to get there and then play a style that gives you a chance to beat anybody. And so that was the thought process behind it.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.